I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing
Queer
my
Centric
best.
is a platform for voices in the margins. It's a place where we can talk about anything because the art of conversation is missing, and I want it to be a place where we sit down and we talk about important subjects that affect all of us that are in the community. And it just so happens to be I'm a big old weirdo. I just want to do it all because here's the big secret that everybody knows and no one really talks about. You live one time. And I don't care if you're 20 or 112. If you want to do something, do it. Because it's never going to be a better time than right now. Hello, everybody. I know you've missed me. Of course, it's the Queer Centric. I don't do as many interviews as I used to, but every now and then, I have someone that I just want to talk to more. And so those of you who follow one of my other podcasts, Bears of a Certain Age with Scotty, you'll recognize this guest. He was on our show a few weeks ago. We were talking about Sidekick Productions and all of the amazing content that they put out. And I thought, oh my gosh, Joshua Pangborn his brain operates like mine, and you want to do 80 things at once, and he's very creative, and I like to know those people. And so I thought, let's bring him on to Queer Centric, where I like to dive deeper, and I want to talk about what it's like to be an indie artist and wear all the hats. And so, my friend, thank you for coming on to this show to talk more about that kind of stuff.
Thank you for having me. I love to talk about my hat rack and all the things that I put on it. So,
for real. And every once in a while, in my world, there's too much on my hats. And then, like, the doctor says, your blood pressure's a little high. Then I'm like, let me breathe. But I want to start by an interesting question. I think a lot of queer people always get asked, when did you know? And I am not curious about when did you know about being queer. I am curious about the moment you knew you were an artist.
Well, good, because that would be like, back in 1983, when I came out of the womb. No,
exactly.
No, when did I know I was an artist? That's a great question. I guess I've always been sort of involved in the arts I remember growing up, I would hear stories from my mother about how I was always telling stories to people. I would run into the kitchen and I'd be like, I don't actually have examples of the stories I told because I don't remember them. But I would tell these stories about these creatures that I would make up and these people that I'd make up. And I'm like 4 or 5 years old, and I'm just talking and telling these stories to everyone that's in the kitchen. And so I guess I was, as Gaga says, I was born that way. Exactly. But when did I know I wanted to be an artist? I just remember everything I've always done has been art related. I started when we had the opportunity to join band in 5th grade. I picked up the saxophone and I did that. When I got to middle school, I joined the drama club and didn't look back from there. I guess I always wanted art to be a part of my life. I guess I didn't accept that I could be an artist for real for as much as I am now until college, though, to be honest with you, because I always felt like this is going to be something that I just do for fun. But then, so I went into college, and I because I don't, as you said, we do too much. I was a double major, double minor. So I was a double major in English and psychology, and a double minor in theater and history. And about 2 months into my freshman year, I realized that I just didn't want to be in psychology. I wanted to be in theater. And so I swapped the major for the minor and the minor for the major. And I think that's when I sort of really realized, well, this is going to be a more major part of my life than I really was ready to admit at that time. So,
and I think that's fascinating because when I was in college, I also started with psychology. And I think as artists, and especially writers, I think that's because we are fascinated with the way people work and the way they tick, and that there's so many varieties. And then that is what's fun about writing characters. So I find that very fascinating. Now, when you were telling stories, I have a couple questions for this. But when you were telling stories to people when you were 4 or 5, we, as artists, true artists, we all love the art form. But there is still that piece of, oh, I got a reaction that I was, you know, that fed me a little bit. Do you remember, did that have something to do with it as well?
I don't remember far enough back for that. I remember in 5th grade, we did a production of Romeo and Juliet, and that, which is an odd choice for a 5th grader, I know.
Yeah.
But I played Friar Lawrence, and I was just beyond. I was just filled with so much excitement to be on stage and hear people clapping and applauding and everything. So I know that was a huge thing for me right there. And then I in elementary school we would do little skits and things during like medieval week or something. It would be like. Imagine if you were like a peasant in the Middle Ages. What would it be like for you? And of course, we don't actually talk about the actual drama and torture of being a peasant in the Middle Ages. We're
Right.
just like, I worked so hard today. I hoed my lawn, garden, whatever it is.
Right.
But still, I mean, I still really enjoyed that stuff. So I mean, definitely. I mean, I think as artists, we love the attention. Even the ones of us who are introverts, we sort of really enjoy the aspects of getting a little bit of attention and praise
Right.
for what we're doing.
And who doesn't like positive reinforcement? Does so much, and I think it's so important. It's why I get called a cheerleader, and some people mean that nicely, some people don't mean that nicely. And I said I won't apologize for it, because we all need more of that. I don't think we ever get enough of it. And if you are an artist, I always tell people, name yourself, say you're an artist, because any of us can be artists, and I want to promote that side of life instead of all the ugly that we have. But speaking of ugly, actually I don't find any of your characters in your shows ugly at all. But you know, you had mentioned when you did stories as a young man, you mentioned the word creatures, and I want to say, because I did notice, so in Demon Doctor, which I will tell everybody, you can find Sidekick Productions on YouTube. They are all bingeable, all of the content. Like, you can, if you have a relaxing weekend, I would encourage you to do that. But one of the things I love about Demon Doctor is I can see that this man must have loved Buffy like I loved Buffy. Is there some of that influence in your work?
I mean, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of the only shows that really heavily influenced me as a creator, I would say. For all the right ways that the show did.
Yeah.
I know that it's aged differently for some people, and I understand that.
Right.
But I also think for the cast and crew of the show, they recognize that this show meant something very special to a lot of the people, and they don't want to take away from that.
Exactly.
To criticize the person who was involved with the pain that they all experienced, and they appreciate one just as much as they want to recognize the other. So,
Exactly.
But yes, long story short, to go back to your original question, Buffy was massively influential on me, and it was I was at that cusp of Buffy when it moved to UPN my freshman year of college. So when Buffy died, I graduated. Spoilers for everybody who hasn't watched the show.
Right.
But when Buffy died, that was my senior year of high school. And then I went to college, and that's the only show that I continued to watch when I was in college. Because I didn't really... You don't have time for, or you don't really understand how to make time for television at that time, because there wasn't DVRs really yet. There wasn't those kinds of things yet. It was like, well, I'm going to watch one show. It's going to be Buffy, and I did, and that's, of course. So Buffy came with me through my my first 2 college years, and then that ended. So I was left with nothing after that. So
And it hurt. All my friends would come over to my apartment on Tuesday nights, because that's when it was on, when it started. And I will say, you mentioned the Buffy. Like, it influenced me, like, way a lot. And I want to say the difference between being inspired by such... I mean, the actors created such great characters, and yes, there's problematic, but the show itself, and I just found it. There's a difference between influence, because your shows, what it does for me on Demon Doctor is it gives me nostalgia, but it's definitely your own story, right? You can be inspired as an artist and not be a plagiarizer, you know? And it just has that same, it hits that same sweet spot that I think will never die for those of us who were diehard Buffy fans as we go. But speaking,
I still watch Buffy. I mean, I still watch it on a regular basis, and I still introduce it to people, and people really really love it. And the obviously the musical episode of Buffy was heavily influential for the musical episode of Skeleton Crew that we did. So it's definitely going to be there in influence. But you're right. It's not something that I copied, but I mean it's something that I was influenced by. It was one of the things that I found. I think it was what kept me from embracing horror early on in my career, because I love horror so much.
Yeah.
And I was worried that I would just copy and paste things. And I needed to do Skeleton Crew to find more confidence in my own voice than before I could do that. So.
And I think you also, as a young artist, when we're just beginning to experiment with what art is, there is a permission. You were learning to give yourself permission to trust yourself. And to go, okay, wait, these are things I authentically feel when I'm creating. And I think as young artists, and everybody who's watching that is just beginning, it's normal to have that moment of, I'm a fraud, but keep walking the path, because you're going to find that, oh, no, I do have something to say. It's not just based off of, I saw this. And I do have to say, because I love quirky things, but so I watched Xena like there was no tomorrow. And she started this, like, I'm sure other shows did it, but I remember seeing her musical episode, the first one that they did two. And then when Buffy did one, I mean, me and my friends memorized the whole soundtrack. We were nerds and would walk down the street and sing it. But it made me know, okay, when I do a show, there will be a musical episode. Because there must be. And I think to give homage to those parts of our life are very important. But I do want to say, talking of inspiration, I used to listen to a podcast years ago, and it was called The Well. And it was about artists talking about, where do you go for inspiration? What's your well? What makes you go, okay, I need to dip back into that place to find my inspiration again? What is the well for you?
That's a good question. I guess it's classical literature and Greek mythology probably are areas that I used to draw from a great deal. Almost all of my plays were adaptations of classical literature or Greek mythology. And then when I shifted into film and television, the first season of Skeleton Crew, part of it is an adaptation of Medea, Euripides' Medea. It's my own very, very weird spin on Medea, but it's Medea. So I guess that's an area that I go for inspiration. A lot of times it's I don't want to. It's going to sound so weird and pretentious when I say it, but things come to me, and they just come to me, and but I don't write something unless I have the idea just pops into my head, and it comes out of anywhere. Like I just wrote a short story that was has nothing to do with the series at all, but one very 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 small moment in an episode of Queer as Folk, because I'm rewatching that right now, because that was again another very influential piece of my child. I guess no, it was my first. That was my senior year of high school. So a very influential part of my senior year of high school. Moving on forward, but there's one little very tiny throwaway line about a character using a fake ID, and for some reason that in my head prompted this whole horror story about a fake ID that I ended up writing for a short story collection that I'm working on. So
that's amazing. See, I have a lot of respect for that, because sometimes if I need to get, like, maybe I've been doing too much hosting and I want to get back to writing or whatever, I will let something prompt me. I will decide for the next week I'm going to be prompted by one thing every day and just create off of that, because it starts priming that pump again. sadly, if you have to have a day job like I do, sometimes you have to get. But let's say, so you do so much that I love, that you do so much at one time. So let's say you've had a week, like it's been a rough week, and you're just tired, but you need to get up and either act or direct or produce any of the things, or write. What is it that gets you past the hump of, oh my God, I don't feel like I have anything left?
Um, Honestly, knowing that no one else is going to do it, so I have to. It's that sense of responsibility that was instilled in me as a child, or that Catholic guilt I grew up with. I don't know, maybe that's what it is. But no, but honestly, I know no one else is going to do this, and it has to get done, and I want to get it done, and I just have to suck it up and deal with it.
That's so funny because, I mean, I'm a little bit older than you, but I still feel we're in a similar generation. And where work ethic, it was just, put in my makeup. And because I say that exact same thing to my team. I will always work harder than anyone because, first of all, I always feel bad when I ask people to do too much. And because, in the end, it's falling on you anyways. In the end, you are the one responsible for the art that you create. So I get that 100%. And that brings up the next question, which is, as artists, it's not just that we want to create, but there is something inside us that says we need to create. I gave up all my art for 3 years in my life. My brother reminds me to this day, don't you ever do that again. And it did. It almost killed me. So I need to create. It gives me something that I can't get anywhere else. Why is it that you need to create?
I'm sort of the same thing, I think, because I sometimes think about people who don't create every day, or because when I go home from my 8 hour to 9 hour day job, and I go home, I'm not going home to just play video games, which is fine if people do that. I have no criticism of anybody who does that. But I can't. I think about the people who don't go home and hop on the computer and type something up or edit something or do whatever it is that I'm doing for that day. And I'm like, they have so much time. What do they do with that time? Because I cannot think of myself not doing this. And some people are like, just slow down and relax. And I'm like, I just don't know what I would do with that time. Even if I go on vacation, I'm working usually. I bring my laptop and I'm typing or I'm writing, I'm responding to emails because I can't imagine not doing it. And that's unhealthy. I will admit that. I fully understand that. One of the things I love about Gen Z is how they really have revolutionized the idea of a work-life balance, and that's so magically important because I don't know why I said that, but it's so incredibly important. It took me a very long time in my day job, my day job, to understand the concept of work-life balance, because there were years I would go by and just not use any, almost half of my PTO or something because I'm like, well, I need to be there and use. But I realized after a while that I need to take that time because if I take that time from and use it, the work is still going to be there when I get back. Exactly. And if it's that important, somebody else will take care of it before I get back.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way with Sidekick because no one else is going to take care of that work.
Exactly.
But that's okay because I love doing it and it revitalizes me in many ways. Like,
exactly. What is the old cliche that if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life?
Yeah.
What they forget to tell you is you will work a lot of days at a job you don't like to do what you like. Yeah. Which is important.
That's a very forgotten part of the idiom, but
Yes, exactly. Because it doesn't flow as well. The first part's so pretty. And then, but isn't that just what it is too? What it takes to do the work we do isn't pretty. You know what I mean? Yeah, and the dream is that we get to do this, but I completely understand if I do not create, I think it's worse for me. But I will tell you, my therapist is working really hard at trying to teach me a little more balance. She has gotten me to agree to 1 day a week that I do, and can I tell you how hard that 1 day a week is for me? I got to do.
I'm sure I believe that because I don't have that one day a week, and I know that I would freak out if I have it. So,
So my new thing, and I know you have a team that you have been able to kind of build around you. My new thing is to allow a team and trust my team. Trust is a big deal, and to know that they understand my vision. And so if I take one day, the whole thing won't fall apart. But I will tell you, it's very hard not to go, oh, I need to get back in there. Anything could happen. You know what I mean? But you have a good sized team that you have built around you. Did you always?
I am very, very fortunate. Did I know I needed one?
Yeah, did you ever?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I started as a theater company, and it was a theater company where I knew that I did everything. I mean, it was me doing all the roles except acting, because I thought that was a great thing about theater. You didn't need anybody else. You could do it all by yourself.
Right.
And have the cast, and so it was you and the cast, and you took care of all the other things, and the cast took care of the acting. It's also not true. It's very, very much not true.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a misconception of a young artist. But even when I moved into filmmaking, I took on way too much, more than I needed to. And it was hard. It's been hard for me to learn to let go of certain things. But as I've done that, I've realized that the work has gotten better and better and easier. By not doing the things I'm not good at and forcing myself to do them, it's meant that the work is better in the end, because I don't have to spend lots of time teaching myself to do something I'm not good at. So
right. And I think I'm going to ask you a question in a minute about learning, because I think as an artist we are constantly evolving. I mean, and I like to talk to artists that I have respect for. So I even sent you this random dude way across the country, and I sent you a random note saying, I just wonder if you have thoughts on sound. But that's how I learn. Like, I take every project, you do it the best you certainly can, and then you try to learn things that you're like, next time I want to do this. So I actually want to ask you, let's go with your film work, from the very first film, the one you wrote and directed, you're in, to where you are today, what are the top 3 things you've learned?
I've learned lights, and I've learned you need them. That's a good one to learn. Audio, that's the most important thing. I think anybody who's going to become a filmmaker, the most important thing you probably need to spend money on and time on and anything is good audio, because people will forgive mistakes with film visually. They will not forgive mistakes with audio. And
just think, I thought I made that up. But I tell people that all the time, that this is where forgiveness lies. It is never with bad sound. People will not let that go. And it is the truest thing. And that's why
there was a movie I saw during the pandemic on Amazon Prime. I did during the quarantine phase of the pandemic. I did a massive deep dive into Amazon Prime's horror vault, which meant I saw some really interesting films. And one of them was decent visually, but the sound was so atrocious that I would never recommend it to anybody, because why would they sit through that? That's not something they would want to sit through.
And it'll take you out. It takes you out of this picture you're painting for people, because if you distract them too much, then they can't be there. It's the whole theater thing of suspension of disbelief. You need that in all of it. Yeah, so it's what's joyous about creating is finding these things, but it's also what is torturous about the same thing. And
then the third thing, since I only did 2. I guess the third thing that I learned that was a major thing to learn was taking risks. Because I was always so careful in many ways when I did theater. And even early on with film, it was very much let's be very careful and do a clean, simple shot. But what's going to be like with the new film that we have coming out, Brooklyn Butcher. That's one of our 2 features coming out this year. We did some of the most interesting and creative stuff we've ever done, and people are really excited just by what they've seen of it so far in the trailers and the clips, the photos and everything. So I think it's about. It's not always about following the rules when it comes to using the tools you have at your disposal.
Right.
It's also about learning when not to, basically.
Exactly.
And also putting the risky stuff on camera in terms of story and content and everything. So
exactly.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's that same thing about, you don't risk much, you don't gain much. There's so many cliches that people should know. Cliches are based on
they're there for a reason.
Exactly. And I love that. Now, before I get some other things, I want to say, and it's everything I say is very sincere, even if I'm being complimentary. It is truly what I think, which is what I love. This is my version of Artist2Artist, except that we're not currently Oscar winners doing this, but
yet,
exactly. I have to say, I didn't know that binge watching your stuff, because I really enjoy it, I had no idea that at my age, at 48 years old, it is still so validating for me to see myself on screen, for me to see people of all sizes, for me to see people... I mean, you represent such a really good diversity in your characters. Until I started watching them, didn't know I still needed that in my life. I've gone through my formative years, but yet it does something to me that I cannot explain. It makes me feel more confident to exist just by watching these shows that I like, because you put them in all the situations that we get into in real life, other than maybe not demons, but you never know.
Sometimes you never know.
Exactly. Few of my exes.
No, thank you.
No, definitely.
That's a big reason why we do what I do what we do, because I never had that growing up, and I never wanted. I don't want people to have that experience ever again. And for me doing this, it's been so validating for myself. I know it might be something very small and very silly, but
hold on.
I did this.
Go ahead. Sorry, it froze on me, so I want to make sure I hear your so.
No problem. But I mean, until I did this show, until I did Skeleton Crew, I would not feel comfortable just going to a pool or a beach and taking my shirt off. And now I do. And it's a small thing, but it's a big thing for myself. I feel very comfortable in my body, and that's
logged in, and we'll splice that. But I want to talk. Let's go ahead and back up and talk. I'll give you the last question. Okay. Let me find where I put my last question. Okay, so I've already we got all of my inspiration talk in there, so we will splice it. So a lot of us watch shows, especially as queer people. Growing up, we watch shows that we want to find ourselves in. Just like I was telling you what it means at my age, a bear of a certain age, if you will, still finding validation in this ability. And we were talking off camera about how you found a way to give yourself permission to be free with your body, to have your shirt off at the swimming pool. That's a big deal for a lot of us. Just watching your show gives me the same feelings. I'm like, wait, I think I might be able to do this. What's it about creating that safe environment? How did you do that? And did you cognitively do that on purpose?
I definitely wanted to create a world where people could be who they were without feeling shame. So everything that I do from Skeleton Crew onward is always about creating those worlds. Whether or not those characters are dealing with wacky hijinks at a bar or actual demons that are coming to kill them. I want them to not feel shame about their bodies. But seriously, yes, everything that I do with Sidekick Productions is focused on creating a world that is queer and fat positive and sex positive even.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely important that people who have a diverse range of sexual interests feel represented and comfortable about that, because they shouldn't feel sex is something that I think in the US especially we have and bodies are things that we've been taught to be ashamed of,
Yes.
because of our puritanical upbringings.
Exactly.
So I wanted to create a world where people are okay, and in most of the stuff you see, you will almost never see anyone saying anything critical of somebody's body or their sexual interests or their sexuality.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the stuff I make, everyone is essentially queer of some
Right.
some aspect and identity. I rarely ever write a strictly cis het person,
Right.
because it's just not. There's enough stories out there about them.
Exactly.
And I don't need to tell them.
Exactly.
So.
And we grew up at a time when we were having to, I mean, it was always forced upon us. We had to get used to looking at cishet romance and all of that. And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I can appreciate that stories. That I hate it when people are like, but they won't give us the same respect.
Mm-hmm.
I love watching your show and realizing, look, we're showing people that if you are not in this, like, what's considered the best body or whatever, we get to celebrate ourselves, and we're having sex. And you know what that is? That's life. And I love that. And I love that you celebrate that, because you talked about growing up, like, in the Catholic guilt. My dad was a Southern Baptist minister. It's the same guilt. They just label it different. Yes. And so to find artists who are celebrating these things that, you know, I still don't think Hollywood does great at, I absolutely love that. I have to ask, when we were talking about going to the well and finding your inspiration, when something does just come at you out of nowhere, what's that process for you? Do you come at it first as a writer? Do you come at it first as a performer? Like, what do you come at it from?
It's almost always as a writer, because I write almost everything that we produce. So before that's going to get produced, I come up with the story for it. So it's almost always as a writer that it comes to me.
With all of the pieces, though, because I totally get it, being the writer, being the actor, being the director, being the producer, all of it, when do the hats start piling up? Because I find when I write something, there's a part of my brain that is deciding how I visually want that. There's a part of my brain saying, how am I going to produce this? When do the multiple personalities start coming into play in that process?
Pretty much when I start writing it, knowing this is something I'm going to produce. If I know I'm going to produce this, I think I'm always thinking, okay, I could put this scene in a church, but where am I going to get a church? So
Thank you.
I move it instead to the rectory, because I can find a rectory somewhere.
Right.
Any place can be a rectory if you hang a crucifix on the wall.
Exactly.
So
I think that's
yeah, right from page one, when I do interior XYZ, it's how is it done?
Exactly.
So.
I used to work with a group of comedians, and we were writing sketches together. And, of course, I'm thinking, this is great that we're writing it. Now I want to put it on film. And I would keep telling them, keep in mind, know your parameters. Just know them. You can do anything. But they would come in and have these elaborate, and I'm like, how much budget do you think we have? We could make this work, but let's talk about how we might, what's the easiest, but what's the most creative. It's parameters make us be creative. And I think that it's a great muscle to have to work. Now, do we all want a $1 billion budget? Yes. But there are ways to do the art and not have that. I am, I said it when you were on the Bear Show. I am fascinated by multi-hyphenate people, especially when I see the work they do, and I'm like, wow. Because some people don't, listen, not everybody has to be. But some of us are just built to be all the pieces, and then we learn how to, let others in. What has been the most elaborate that you've had to get being all of the hats?
I think what exactly do you mean by most how elaborate?
So what, I guess I would say, what has been the most challenging situation you've put yourself in? Yeah, let's say that.
That's a good one to ask. I would say it's probably the musical episode of Skeleton Crew is what taught me the most. Because I have a tendency to not listen to people when they say you can't do it, because I don't like being told no.
Yeah.
And I also think that people sometimes are too cautious, because
Yes.
You're not going to be able to do anything if you just sit there and say, oh, I'm not ready for this yet.
Right.
If it sucks, if you fail, you fail. Yeah. But it's better to try it.
Exactly.
But I think with the musical episode of Skeleton Crew, that was certainly the most things I had to learn and figure out in the most amount of time. The most tricks for editing that I had to learn. The most writing music with Nakia was I had done lyrics before, but I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And then recording the music and going through all the different mixes for it, and learning that there's so many different steps for actually doing the mixes.
Yeah.
And then working with Nakia to put it all on Spotify and learn all of that whole process. All of that was pretty daunting. It's either that or the year or 2019, I think, which is the year that we filmed and produced 3 shows. We filmed Art of Blowing It, Demon Doctor Season 1, and Skeleton Crew Season 5, I think.
Wow.
So, and I realized, you know what, this might be too much even for me to deal with all of these things in the same year. So we might have to not do all of this in the same year going forward.
Right. It is funny because we want to do, as creatives, we want to do all of it. And so what I do is every year I call it a summit. I get people together that I trust, and I show them the projects I want to do that year. And inevitably, they say, how about we move part of this to the year after? And I'm like, oh, I hate that, but I understand. I
do that too. I come up with at the beginning of the year, I'm like, this is what I want to do this year, and it's usually like 12 projects, and it's like I also know that it's like there's no way I'm going to do all 12 of these projects, but I still want to put them down to try to accomplish it.
Exactly.
Because why not?
Exactly. I also want to talk to, so I love the indie world of any of the art that we do, because I think we get to be more creative in indie work. Plus, Hollywood hasn't, come begging me to write the sitcom for Netflix. So, but in that, it's also, so I've lived in LA. I lived there for a few years. You are in New York. They are very big artistic cities. I loved what I learned in LA, but I also learned another part that I wasn't expecting, which is the competitiveness. Because there are people there, hitting the streets. So the collaborative nature, they fight with each other. How have you been able to, you seem so community in the people you work with, community oriented. How do you balance that competition with having a community around you?
I think it's because initially in Skeleton Crew, many of the people who worked on the first season with me were people that were friends, and so we all cared about each other already, and the people that we brought on quickly just assimilated very, very nicely. And then ultimately, if anybody watches Skeleton Crew, they'll see that season 1 to season 2 was sort of like a mini reboot in some ways. And it wasn't a reboot in the sense of like the story changed or went backwards or we did anything. It was just it evolved in the focus and involved in the characters that we focused on. And some people moved on, and it's not because we didn't have a good experience, but it's because it wasn't the experience they were looking to continue.
Right.
And that's fine, I think, for us. Most of the time, if you watch any of our shows or movies, you'll see that many of the faces you see come back for multiple different productions, and it's because we love working together, and we have a good time together, and we support one another. Like when someone has something happening for them, we're excited for them. We don't go, oh, well, I wish that could be me.
Yeah.
You did this, curse you, or I mean, there aren't that many parts in the city for large plus size fat men. So oftentimes we're submitting opposite one another, and we're all excited for each other when something happens.
And I think
so it's about it's about choosing to be supportive of one another. And if you're not, you might not get brought in again.
Right.
And because it's not the community that we want to create.
Well, the fact that as a creator you are even aware of that, I think, is what we need more of. I mean, who doesn't? I love Adam Sandler because he created a world where he uses friends he went to high school with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he wants them to win as much as he wants to win. It's also why I believe so much in cheerleading each other, because we don't have to rip each other to shreds, and we have so much more fun. I always tell people, like you said, some people move on, and it's not, don't take it personal, because I always say, talk about more cliches, a project tells you what it wants to be, and when it wants to be born. It's our job as creatives to accept that, or to fight it. But I have found in my life, let it lead you where it wants to be. And when it's time, it's going to be the perfect time. It's going to have the people who needed to be there. And those people I will choose to be grateful for. And so I have to say...
sometimes people just move on because they move to a new city or opportunities brought them somewhere else. I mean, after the quarantine phase of the pandemic, a lot of people left New York and they moved on. So there are people who won't be back to some of the shows. And it's not because they didn't want to be back. It's because they don't live here anymore.
Yeah.
But the good news is technology allows for us to sometimes even include them.
Exactly.
Like Demon Doctor, one of the main characters from season 1, isn't in season 2, and that's because he moved to Atlanta. But he still does 2 cameos for me on the phone.
I love
to
that.
Just sort of have his character there still. So
and
it happens.
He does a video call. I mean, I saw that, and I thought that's exactly, you find a way. And it's amazing to have people recognize each other and to see each other. And speaking of recognizing each other and things that put us on a platform, Bear World Media, I've worked with them forever, I feel like. Did I see your name pop up on a nomination?
Yes, I have been nominated this year for Best Bear Artist, and I'm very, very excited. It's the second year I was nominated by Bear World. I won last year's Best Bear Representation in the Media. So I was really, really shocked and excited to win last year. I did not expect that at all.
I love it.
Especially because I was up against some amazing people who have done some amazing things. So I was thrilled that I was even included, let alone that I won. Right. And then this year, again, I'm up against some really beautifully talented artists, and I'm thrilled to be among their company. So
I think it's amazing. I love that Bear World does the awards, and I have to say, you work your butt off, and it's obvious when people watch it. I'm sure more than just me says it's so amazing to see me on screen. So I mean, I will definitely watch all artists and support all of them, but I mean, you need a second term, if you will. You need the second award because you work hard and because you deserve the recognition. I mean, you're working a day job and creating more content than I've seen a lot of creators do.
Well, I won't turn them down if they offer me a second year of being recognized. So if they insist, I won't say no.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's amazing. You won't be like some of the Oscars over the years where they send someone in to say, you know what, I'm good.
No. I will be gracious to accept my prize. So.
Right. Well, I have to say, I do want everybody to know you can find Sidekick Productions on YouTube. I cannot tell you how much I think you should go do that. There's so much in there. I don't know how you have time. But what's even better is there are so many different types of shows that you have done that it's worth it. That can be my new Netflix. You know what I mean? Because of what's there. And if you have felt like you haven't been seen, if you are a bear of a certain age, it's a way to go, oh, I am seen. I am recognized. And I think your art is so important, but also just the fact that you put yourself so, blatantly in your work, you put who you are. I think that's a huge thing that we need to do more of, and which is why I celebrate indie artists for sure. And they should give you money.
Yeah. Yes, that I agree. But if they want to, they can go to my Patreon.
Exactly.
And go to patreon.com/sidekickproductions.
Exactly.
And if you go there, not only do you get to join our private Discord, but you also get lots of behind-the-scenes clips and lots of alternate scenes. And you also get, depending on what tier you are in, you get to see short stories that I've written. And you also, everything we put on YouTube is released on Patreon first. So
yes,
I can't promise that will be the case with our feature films coming out this year,
right?
Because those I'm hoping will have a different life than YouTube. But everything else that goes on YouTube will go on there first.
Which I love, and I have to tell everybody, I am not just a mouthpiece saying this stuff. The minute I met you and we had your interview on Bears of a Certain Age, I went over that night and joined Patreon because I want to know. And I want to be a part of the community. So people, if I can put my money where my mouth is, I would say, please do the same. Indie artists need support. It's not easy, but also it's not empty. You give stuff. We get to see content. We get, the Discord, we get to talk about content. And so definitely everybody go over to Patreon and do that. And then once you do that, come over to mine. So,
Yes,
that's...
yes.
But I love this so much. And you're also on... Instagram, which is where I live, basically. So what's your handle on Instagram?
Very simple. It's at Sidekick Productions.
Love. Now, are you super... I mean, we're not even halfway through this year, so you have, like, a ton of projects coming. Are you super excited? Does that keep you going?
It really does. I'm in post-production on the two feature films right now that you know about. So those are coming out. They should be wrapped actually in the next 4 to 6 weeks is what I'm hoping. So that's really, really exciting. And then I'm writing the second season of a show right now. And I'm writing the first season of another show right now. And we're going to produce at least one of those this year.
Nice.
And I have a short film that I filmed in January that's being in post-production right now. And then I have at least one more short film that I'm planning to do this year.
Love.
And then I also have a collection of short stories that I'm planning on releasing in the fall.
See, This is why I love you. I adore the amount of work you do. It also makes me feel like, oh, thank God, I'm not the only one. And
you are not alone.
I mean,
there's a crazy train, and we're both on it, and that's okay. So
exactly. I have to thank you so much for coming on here and just. I love knowing the process. I love finding out the depths of a creative person, and I know my audience also enjoys that. So, you see, this drives my producer crazy because I have all these things I want to do. And then every once in a while, I'm like, we need to add a show. I just need that to get done. So we're just going to squeeze it in right over here. So thank you so much. You've put up with me twice now, and I think it's been good.
I will do it as many times as you want. I have it's such a pleasure coming on and talking to you and sharing our love of creation together.
Yeah.
Because that's what's so much fun about doing shows like this is because you get a chance to just talk about what you love to do and what each other loves to do, and that's such a wonderful experience to share with people who also love to do what you're doing.
Exactly. There is something about being in that, it feels like an energy to me of creativity, and so when you share that with another creative, it is just this constant flow, and I think that's amazing. So that's why I love talking to you, and you're always so kind, and you're always willing to answer crazy questions. And so thank you so much. I want my entire audience, please go follow Joshua R. Pangborn and everything that he does, because it's just going to get bigger and bigger, because that's what we do.
That's the goal. So.
Exactly. So remember, everybody, until next time, I'm always somewhere on some stage or have some show, and I love that you follow me this whole time. And let's celebrate the people we have around us and the creatives that need that good boost of energy. So until next time, everybody, bye.
Bye.
I don't really know what comes next. I'm just doing my best, even though I'm so stressed out. Everything just feels like a test that I fail, so depressed.